Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of the Risk It All podcast. You're joined by myself and Brian, usual hosts, and Ryan Smith, who's our guest this week.
Welcome,
Thank
Ryan.
you for having me, guys.
Thanks for
pleasure,
coming.
pleasure to have you on. So, just for everyone, Ryan is the managing director of Keane Premier Group, who have a wide variety of care homes across the central belt of Scotland.
That's right.
And we are going to dig into his story and sort of see how he got to where he is today. So yeah, let's just get stuck right in, will we?
The good, the bad and the ugly.
Yeah, give us all flavours, mate. We want to hear all about it.
That's why I'm here.
Yeah. Let's just start off with, your early days then. Tell us about, where you grew up, your family and your early years.
Born and bred in Chapel Hall, just outside, obviously in Lanarkshire, not too far from Glasgow. Myself and my brother Ross, who's obviously my business partner, he's not here today. Hello, Ross.
Heard loads about you already, Ross.
You're a Rottweiler apparently, but yeah, he's as I say, he's obviously not here today. Both of us grew up 2 years of a sort of difference with us. Went to St Aloysius Primary School.
Right.
In
Who's
Chapel
older?
Hall.
Who's the oldest?
If you want to look at the two years, you're going to see him. I'm saying that. Cassie will back me up. I'm 2 years older than him, so but he hates the fact that people kind of think it's reversed.
Right, okay.
Although the grey hair these days has kind of changed it. So
mate, that's par for the course when you're
listen,
in business.
he's not grey. He's not grey,
right,
and
okay.
I've went grey in the past 4 years.
I'm envious looking at your grey hair. I've got fuck all.
Listen, Justin, there's ways to fix that now, so I wouldn't be bothered too much about that. Yeah, grew up in Chapel Hall. Had a really nice upbringing. My mum and dad were very good to us. Fortunate enough, my dad had a great job in telecommunications, probably when that industry kind of really took off and started to expand the late 80s and the early 90s. And kind of strangely enough, where we grew up in Chapel Hall, it's kind of close in that village, so the people you kind of tend to go to school with, you kind of tend to be friends with for a long time. So I've been fortunate enough that I've got the same group of friends that I met in day one in primary school, who we are all still socialise.
Right,
Our families all do things together.
That's
and
nice.
And we kind of obviously meet up for a beer once a month. So yeah, enjoyed it. No complaints so far.
Brilliant. And what was school like for you? You mentioned St Aloysius there.
School was interesting because the village was quite a big village in terms of the size. There was over 10,000 people in it. So the primary school was kind of jam-packed. So I think we had 2 primary 7 classes with about 33 people in it, and another one like a sort of composite class. So there was loads of us. Everybody was always doing something. Played in the school football team. I was the school captain. A wee plug there, St Aloysius. Absolutely enjoyed it. Obviously, going on to high school's a different challenge altogether. Where we are, obviously, where the high school we went to, St Margaret's High School, is right slap bang in the middle of Airdrie. So
right.
Obviously Chapel Hall's in the outer regions, so we're kind of classified as the sort of outer
Outsider.
regions. So I went into high school with a completely different attitude. Didn't really enjoy it, if I'm honest. Kind of stumbled my way through it. Done kind of relatively okay, I would say, in my exams and stuff like that. Stayed on and had some hires. Had quite a few life experiences that I can't repeat in case my mum watches this podcast. But yeah, listen, can't complain. I never get myself into too much trouble.
Did you leave at the first opportunity at high school, or did you stick it out for a bit?
What had happened was I got to 4th year and done my standard grades, and I got some what I would classify for my intelligence quite good grades. And my dad said to me, "Look, I'm in telecommunications. You want to get into telecommunications, you're going to really need to get something in terms of hires to go to college." So at that point, no idea what I wanted to do. Kind of try to fluff it a wee bit. I'll go and get a job here, I'll get a job doing this, and never really finding a path that I would probably say. And he said, "Look, stay on for another year, find out what you need to get into Bell College," which was obviously in Hamilton, to do electronic and electrical engineering. So stayed on to 5th year for another year to do some hires to get me in there. was fortunate enough to get the grades, but also liked the holidays. So I decided to stay on 6th year and done home economics and all this, and just had an absolute blowout. But no, I'm too young to go to college, so I'll just stay for a year.
That sounds very much like my 6th year in high school.
It sounds like my 6th and 7th year in high school, to be honest.
Listen, see if you've got a chance to do it, why not?
I was I remember I knew that, like, I was a shambles in high school pretty much, right? I just was the epitome of a class clown, really. I just didn't enjoy it. It wasn't for me, but was kind of too scared to leave because I just didn't know what to do with myself. So it was just like, I'll stick it out. I'll turn the corner. The corner never got turned. Remarkably, as we've spoken about a couple of times, at one point decided to do a 7th year, probably for the reasons that you've just mentioned. Thought, it's an extension of a bit of a jolly, really.
That's
I actually didn't know a 7th year existed until you told me.
Well, neither did I.
I'm older than you.
Neither did I until we were in 6th year. Sorry, I know we're digressing here, right? But my big mate Pete came down. Basically, we were in the common room one day, or the social area. Came down. He was like, "I've just spoke to the head teacher, and she's agreed to keep me on as an adult returner next year." And I was like, "I'm not having that." Right up to Mrs. Boyd's door and chatting. Here you've let Peter stay on, and she was like, "Oh, Brian, like, come on, you're clearly not enjoying it here." And I was like, "I know, but I'll turn the corner. I'll focus. I think halfway through 7th year, I wasn't kicked out, but it was suggested to me that I might want to
quietly leave,
just quietly move on and find myself a job.
I never got that. As I say, 6th year was just a laugh. Literally, you're 17. You're like, right, listen, you're going out, you're doing all the things that you want to do, and I had no focus in school because I thought to myself, I've got what I needed when I was in 5th year. Just go in here for a carry on.
So what was, as I call it, proper job number 1?
So if you ask my mum and dad, they would probably say my paper round because they kicked you out the door at 6 in the morning and go and deliver papers. What I'd done was, in the summer between like 6th year and get into college, I got a job with a company called, it was Scott Shield Security Systems,
right?
Who are owned by my brother's father-in-law now, strangely enough.
Right, okay.
During that summer, and decided it was more or less just being an apprentice, an alarm engineer. So I'm thinking, right, I'm going to go and do this. This will kind of give me a bit of flavour for it. But obviously, you're the young apprentice in the door, so I got absolutely slaughtered, roasted, sent for all the
nonsense.
All the nonsense. Go and do and get the newspaper. I need a newspaper. I need to read it back to front, and like you're getting all the stuff. They did try and one of the other apprentices get tarred and feathered. I didn't get that. I was all right.
Actual tarred,
just in his back. Just in his back. We'd done high-rise flats over in Cambuslang, the back of Cambuslang. Just where one of the care homes is, and they were pulling all the cabling in, and this guy had pulled the cables through, and he'd snipped them in the conduit. Like, so obviously you're kind of connecting them into the fire detection system, and he snapped it. So the guys had come up to connect everything in, and they weren't. Pulled it all down. They'd done that. So obviously you've got 3 engineers like, who done this? You, come here. They've just burst a pillow open right down his back, so he looked like a chicken.
I thought that was just a metaphorical phrase you were really
No, absolutely. I don't. Obviously, it wouldn't have been tarred. It was some on his back, but they called it tarred and feathered. So, it was an experience. So that kind of led me up to going to college. I'd done an HND in electronic and electrical engineering. Nobody told me going to college that you could get money. So, see, as soon as I get that student grant.
Happy days.
See, for about, I don't know if I can remember the first 3 months of college, because obviously there was a bar across the road, so it was literally, you were getting in there, going back out, going home, having something, eating, sleeping, and then eat, sleep, repeat kind of thing. So it was enjoyable. Spent 2 really good years, made a lot of good friends at Bell College. At that particular time, it was kind of seen as a tech college, so there was quite a lot of opportunities came about it. Had I been a wee bit more mature, I probably would have had something better to leave to go to in terms of straight into engineering, because a lot of the guys who were in my class who were dead smart had things that they were like, so maybe after the first year they were talking to companies to say, I'm going to do this. Obviously I wasn't interested in any of that, so none of that happened.
Too busy in the boozer.
Imagine putting a boozer across with a college.
I know.
What chance you got? Do you know what I mean?
It's genius as well.
It's really genius.
Student
if
loan
you're the bar owner.
is gone. Student loan is gone. Well, literally, it was.
And how did you find engineering? Because you're talking to a field engineer over here. I studied engineering at uni.
Right.
didn't stick it. How did you find it? How was your mind tailored to that?
What probably happened was, because of my dad's experience, was, right, okay, we want you to do that. We think you'll be really good at that. I can help you. I can get you jobs and I can kind of show you where to go. And I probably at that time, maybe a wee bit rebellious in terms of, all right, okay, I'll go and do it, but I'm only doing it because you want me to do it, no because. So maybe never gave it my all. I actually was very interested in it because it's obviously a lot to do with maths and physics and a lot of different aspects of how things work. And I'm quite intrigued by how things connect and interconnect.
Yeah.
And for me personally, as I say, had I been a wee bit more mature, I probably would have, I got my HND, but I probably would have had something better to follow that on after that, rather than just kind of stumbling out and saying, right, okay, I've sobered up. Where do we go now? Kind of thing in life.
Yeah.
And that was a wee bit of a rude awakening for me, because after finishing that, I almost spent a year just kind of doing different jobs. One of the jobs I did was fitting handles onto golf clubs over in Cumbernauld. Literally putting the grip onto it was Slazenger or something. One of the makes over in the back of Cumbernauld. So it was literally kind of almost a year of trying to find myself a wee bit. Because I'm thinking, right, okay, I've got this. Do I really want to do this now? And again, pushing back on everybody, you think, I know better. 20 years of age, I can go and do what I want. Never really knowing where you're going to fall, because everybody, and I challenge anybody to say any different, unless you've got a career path and you've got a vision board for your 16, probably really knows where they're going to go. You throw the cards up, it's which one do you catch? Well, with me, it was a wee bit, I'm not really sure what I want to do now. I've got what I thought I wanted.
Yeah.
I'm not really sure that's what I want to do now.
I mean, for what it's worth, to validate that, I think you might be close to guest number 30 now. We're not far off it anyway. And the vast majority of people that we've spoken to, if not all, haven't set out to do what they're doing. They haven't went, right, my plan at 18 is I'm going to do and this is the sequence and I'm going to follow that to the dot. Folk just stumble about and go, right, I'll try that, see how that goes. Well, I don't like it, I'll try something else, and then a wee opportunity presents itself and they go, I could maybe do that actually, or I could do that better than the people that I'm working for now and earn more money. And there's very few people, I think, that sit down at a young age. Maybe different if you're training to be, so we had Scott on, who was a very successful dentist. That's different, because it's like, right, you need a path, and you go to college and uni and you learn how to do it, and then you put that into practice and it's a wee bit more defined. But a lot of your entrepreneurs are just, they stumble about, going from thing to thing.
Absolutely.
And that's true for my own career as well. And I remember there's almost that period where when you're trying to figure out what your thing is, some of your pals are maybe a bit ahead of you. They're starting to get money in, booking holidays. I'm going to this, and you go, I just need to get a job. I just need to get money coming in because I don't want to get left behind. I want to go on holiday and I want to do things. And then you find yourself in a job and go, I'm actually quite good at this. Maybe stick this out, and before you know it, 20 years has passed. And
that makes sense.
So similar. Yeah. Again, probably 19, 20, just at the college time, one of my friends got a job and was making really good money. He's running about a Peugeot 309, all decked out, alloy wheels, the folding stereos and all that. And you're right, you think, am I going to get left behind a wee bit, or should I be a bit further forward? And everybody will, I'm a firm believer, everybody will find where you're going to go. You will find your path. It might take you 10 years, it might take you 10 months, but you want to get somewhere where you can feel fulfillment and satisfied in it. And at that point in my life, I just wasn't sure.
Yeah.
You know, that way, like, am I really, is this the direction that I'm going to go? And people laugh at me now, they say I can't get my hands dirty. Cassie will probably think with that now. I'm absolutely hopeless at DIY, so I'm not really sure what kind of engineer I would have made.
Yeah,
I'd have been terminating like that. And everyone would have been broke. I'd have been the guy that was getting...
Join the crap DIY club with me and Brian then. But
excuse me, speak for yourself.
One of the things kind of picking up both your points, right? So you were saying about, like, you will find your path eventually, and the common theme is whether you choose one career and you just keep finding the job in that one career, which loads of people do, by the way, that's completely good and well, or you're like yourself, or most of the people we speak to, where they just kind of go from here to there and then find it eventually. The one thing that's consistent is that they never stop looking, so they don't chuck it. They don't go, oh man, I just can't get a break. I'm just throwing the towel in. We've never had anybody say that. It's just keep going, keep finding, keep looking, and it will happen.
Do you know, as I said, I spent the best part of a year stumbling just from various different sort of short-term jobs, trying to say, okay, right, what do I want to do?
Give us a rundown of them.
Slazenger, I'm sure it was Slazenger doing the golf handles. The whiskey place over in Bells Hill, I can't remember what it's called, the bottling plant. I was in there and I actually get reprimanded because they gave you like a rugby top. And for some reason, I used to have my collar up all the time. Now I look back like,
what was I doing?
What was I doing? You know what I mean? And it kept saying, you don't look professional, get that down. So I never lasted long in there. Trying to think where else.
I thought you were going to say something else. You get reprimanded in a whiskey.
I imagine that he's still there. And literally just kind of went like helping kind of friends out if they were sort of doing stuff. And what happened at the end of 1999, getting into 2000, I thought, right, listen, I really need to start focusing on, I need to find something that either I'm really good at and what I'm going to enjoy. Like you said earlier, Brian, everybody's either started earning money, so you're comparing yourself to a position where they are. Obviously not necessarily the right frame of mind to do that at that age. So seen an ad for a job as a almost junior pre-sales consultant in engineering. I thought, right, okay, not really sure I like this, but I'm not fitting golf clubs all my life, so it's time to go and give it a try. So it was a company called Kilbride Communications over in East Kilbride. I remember, never had a suit. I remember going and buying a suit and saying, right, if I look back now, I must have still had the labels and all that. Going over for an interview with the guys, and the guy who was originally going to interview me was off. He wasn't there. He said, so the sales director's going to come in and interview you, and obviously one of the senior sales guys will interview you because the engineer guy's not there. So sat with these two guys, talking away, okay, you've done this. You've obviously got HND in electronic engineering. What they'd done was telephone systems.
Right.
So it was installing PBX telephone systems. And interview probably lasted about 45 minutes. And I said, look, guys, obviously I want this job. I want to give it a go. And they said, we don't want to give you this job. We think you'll be better at something else.
Right, okay.
I said, right, okay, so what is it? I said, we want you to go into our sales programme to sell telephone systems rather than install them. I'm like, right, okay. Why is that? Obviously get the feedback. You don't shut up for obvious reasons. You think you're personable. You think you understand a lot about the mechanics of how it works. You'd probably be good at explaining that to a customer that's buying it.
Yeah.
So I said, okay, right, I'll take the plunge. Unbeknownst to me, come back in for another interview to get things tied up. And I looked at the contract and they were paying me £7,000 a year. Right? So I was like, right, okay, it's like after tax at 500 quid a month. I'm like, right, okay, all my pals are earning a lot more money than that. And I went, should I take it? Should I not take it? So I spoke to my mum and dad and I said, look, 20 years of age, am I going to do this? Obviously, this could be a career path for me, something I can go in and I might enjoy, but it's obviously taking a hit in terms of what I'm going to earn because I was earning a lot more doing casual jobs. So they said, like, we'll support you. Go and give it a chance. I went in there and I absolutely loved it. Absolutely loved it. Had quite a probably accelerated career path through different aspects of telecommunications and sales. But for the first 6 months I was there at Kilbride Communications, it was like a whirlwind.
Yeah.
A wee guy sitting, I dyed blonde hair at this point, so I must have been miles out.
Calling up.
Strolling in, all right, guys, you want to buy a phone system? And literally was getting in to people established like garages, lawyers, dentists, and saying, look, you're paying X amount of money a month for this phone system for BT. Come on, we'll obviously rip it out for half the price. Done that and found I was really good at it. Really, to the point where they had put so I started in the January and they were all going on holiday. Obviously the sales guys, as you know, they do. They were all going to Marbella golfing, and the end of the April was the end of the sales quarter. So you had to, they were going in May. So they said, look, you're the only guy here. If you sell £5,000 worth of profit and these phone systems will take you, think, right, he's never going to get that. So I'm literally out champing doors. I'm going everywhere. 20 years of age, think, I want to make sure I get in this golf trip. And smashed it out the park. And they're like, okay, we need to try and find him somewhere to stay because all the rooms are all booked and get him on the flight. Went over there. And obviously these were established sales guys. When you've seen the film, the boiler room and all that, it was literally like that. A group of a lot older men than I was at that time. And me, this wee guy, kind of strolling up with my sandals and my shorts and all that on, saying, right, where are we going, guys? So it was a great learning experience. I probably matured a lot
Yeah.
in a short space of time because I had to.
Aye.
Because I was in a position where I was being evaluated every day.
Aye.
I was also up against peers who were far more experienced and established than me, but I was being judged in the same level as them. So I very quickly lost the new guy tag.
Yeah.
Oh, wait a minute, you made the holiday, so it wasn't go give him all the smaller wee deals. It was, no, he can actually go and do the other stuff. So the competition sort of went up a wee bit, but I think that was good for me personally and for my own development, because I kind of had to accelerate where I was. I couldn't really stand still.
Yeah.
But in my opinion, I'd sort of found something that I was good at.
Yeah.
I can definitely see how, because I worked in sales at a young age, but it was B2C, so arguably you could still be quite immature and get away with it. But operating in kind of B2B and selling to business owners, you kind of need to mature.
Yeah.
You need to be able to hold a conversation, and often you've got a 30-second pitch to grab some attention. And, you know, if you're a daft wee guy almost, like, just try to trailblaze it, they see through it. Do you know that way? So
I remember getting sent to the back of Mary Hill, was a transport business. I'm sure it begins with an M. Right by the car washes in Mary Hill on the right hand side, right by that left hand side, there's like an industrial estate, and you go down into it. So this big car garage, transport business, and again, I must have been doing the job for 4 months maybe. So I go in, and they had quite a large yard, so they needed quite a decent sized telephone system. At that point, DECT was becoming popular. That's like your cordless telephones. It was the digital version was becoming popular then. So I'm going to remember the guy's name was Ronnie. Forgive me saying him, Ronnie. I'm sorry if you're out there, wherever you're in. Sorry, I forgot your name. Literally going in, and 3 people were there to meet me, and 3 of the most men's men you'll ever meet.
aye.
Right, so you hear and it was literally, obviously BT had been ripping them off for what in terms of what they were paying for their costs. So what you going to do for us? And I literally had to stand in. I remember standing behind at their desk, telling them what I was going to do, and my right leg's like, because I thought, right, this is the first time I've really been under pressure. Going back to what you're saying, you're not fluffing it. And these 3 guys get tore into me. Wait, you? Where are you fae? The team just support a big Rangers thing at the back end. I'm at Rangers. That was your best player. I'm like, aye, right, no bother. And literally, I remember coming out of there, and it's a kind of life lesson for me that front it up. Do you know what I mean? Take the oxygen out of it, because I literally went back to him and said, right guys, I'm going to be honest with you, I know about that. I don't know about you. But together we'll know how that'll work. And if it doesn't work, then it doesn't work. But I'm not going to sit here and tell you something that you're going to get back to my boss and say, he told us that. I'm not going to sell you something that you're going to come back and say, yeah, man, I hear that's not true. So that was I kind of wish I remember his second name.
All right,
kind of pivotal moment.
Well, it sounds like that did you wonders in terms of just maturing you, and also,
Definitely.
again, when we think about all the entrepreneurs that we've spoke to, so many of them started out in sales, and you hear it online a lot today. It's like, if you can master sales, you're not going to struggle in life. Whether it's a sales job, whether it's running your own business, you crack being able to sell. Get to me. I'll stop it for you.
Sales guy can't even open a bottle of water.
You're not doing much better, are you?
There you go, there's always a way.
So just keeping it moving then, how long did you do that job for in the end? Were you in that a while? Or?
I stayed in that role for the best part of 2 years.
Right.
And what happened is the sales manager for one company moved to another company across the road, and he took me with him. But I was doing the exact same job, literally. The only difference being I'd went from selling Panasonic telephone systems to Samsung telephone systems.
Right.
So I'd stayed doing that for the best part of 2.5 years, and then had an opportunity to go and work for, at that particular point, British Telecom were sort of being deregulated and splitting up into the BT local businesses.
Right.
So they were like almost like a franchise, but it was BT. It was BT engineers. It was BT kit. You had to wear the BT badges. So they were doing that in and around areas of sort of West Central Scotland. So the opportunity to go and work with them. So obviously working for BT is a completely different animal to having been worked before. But the difference being is, because they split it up, you only go to certain areas. So our area was from the Clyde to the Solway.
Right.
So literally the Solway, so it was Dumfries and Galloway. We weren't allowed near Glasgow city centre. It was all Kilmarnock, Ayrshire, Prestwick, all that kind of area. And then in certain, if your clients were in the city centre, then if they had an office there, you could use them. But there was obviously a BT area in Glasgow that kind of serviced that area as well. So went into that, which again was you were trying to rip out BT's telephone systems to now trying to protect that base. So you were poacher turned gamekeeper, and it was a completely different experience, a very, very highly regulated experience. So I kind of went from where you designed it yourself and everything would kind of work, and you'd have an engineer in the back, it would kind of tick it off for you to, okay, you've got to put this by 3 or 4 people who are going to decide whether this will work. And after the sales process, somebody's phoning up to make sure you've agreed every single thing. And you can't just sell one thing, you need to sell the 5 of them. So if you sell one, you're not getting any commission on it. You need to sell the 5 value adds, or you're getting no money. So that was a bit of a different approach to doing what we were doing, because I was then going back in to see people who had told to rip BT out 3 years earlier to say, listen, I'm back, but guess what? Your credibility's shot a wee bit, mate. So that was a kind of bit of a...
How were you, did the company take care of finding you leads, or were you having to, like, I don't want to use the term hunt out, but were you having to develop your own pipeline and then sell to them?
So the first 2 jobs in telecoms, corporate communications, they had a telesales team. So literally you would get in the Monday and say, there's your diary for the week, and you would go, which I thought was great.
Happy days, aye.
Although that, in hindsight, for a job in sales, it's probably the wrong thing to do when you're just beginning, because an element of cold calling, in my belief, has to be trained at the start, so that it's less of a burden when you get older, because everybody's dead apprehensive at picking up the phone. They don't want to do it, and you come across a lot of sales guys. I'm a closer, not an opener, but you kind of, if you're young and you're trying to do a lot, you need to be both. And as I say, for those 2 first jobs, it was all there. BT, it was on a plate. You come in, there's 10 people wanting your phone systems, go and see them. And you literally walk in and say, okay, there's your bill, you're paying this.
Is that an order taker?
It literally was, because I never learned anything new when I was at BT compared to what I'd learned in the first 2 years. First 2 years was you're learning on the job, you're doing it. BT was, like I say, all done for you. You had a system calculator that would tell you what it was. You had, okay, put how many lines, how many extensions, want voicemail, do they want auto attend? Tick a box. Whereas before, you were getting in and discussing it with them and saying, right, okay, I think you should have this. I think this will work. That was more of a package.
Yeah, right, okay,
aye. So it kind of took away a lot of, not the negotiation skills, but a lot of the variety and the dynamics that you could bring to something. You were more, it does what it says in the tin kind of thing.
Did you get less of a buzz getting a sale on BT because of that?
So much less. It was so much easier.
Yeah,
it was so much easier. It's like, I'm trying to think, like, it's almost like coming in the day, they've sent you an order. Right, okay. They're sent you an order. Right, okay, we're putting your target up with three grand. Right, okay. Because you're like, the stream of people wanting your business was constant.
Yeah.
And it was like, okay, here's 1,000 clients, obviously not all mine, but in terms of that area, whose telephone systems need renewed in the next year. All right, I'll take that 100. Phone them. And your phone call was different. How you doing? It's Ryan Smith, BT Local Business. I'm coming to see you tomorrow at 2. Are you free, or Wednesday? I come in.
Aye.
I remember going down at the Popinjay. And that wasn't our area. For the life of me, I'm not sure how we got it, but it was 2 brothers that owned it at the time. And the telephone lines used to span across the road. You know the Popinjay?
Aye,
so obviously, see with heat in winter, they start to sag, because obviously they heat up and then they cool down. So the line started to sag, and the lorries used to come and take them down.
Right.
And I remember the phone says, right, come down, send somebody down. So sure, the guy's name was Brian and all. It was 2 brothers.
Legend.
And I went down, and I remember the phone me. He said, listen, bring a phone book. Right? He said, bring a phone book. So I'm like, why does everybody want a phone book? At that point, it was 118. No, everybody was phoning 118. And I'll bring a phone book. So I go down, and I'm like, right, okay, what's the story? He says, get up down the back of your trousers, I'm going to boot your arse. I'm like, what? He's like, they were wanting compensation, because obviously the lines were coming down.
Right.
So I'd been sent down, daft wee guy, bounced straight in. Suit was too big, blonde hair, like, right, what's the story, guys? What's wrong? You want to buy something? We're not buying anything. You owe us money. And I remember getting in, and the 2 of them absolutely tore into it, to the point I thought, listen, I'm going to get cracked here. I kind of really need to leave. And they were wanting some like £30,000 compensation, because the lines had obviously been taken down. And I remember phoning back up to my boss, BT. He says, you can offer them 169 quid. I says, I'm not getting in there to offer them 169 quid. I'm not doing it. I'll phone them for the outside. I'm not going back in. And I remember getting back in, and I thought, that was the difference in like dealing with people. See, like the wee companies that you're dealing with, they were more personable. They would try and understand your problems, whereas it went to, obviously when it was BT at the time, it was no one interested.
They'll just be looking at a sheet and going, right, this is what's available, wouldn't they?
Aye.
And thinking about that, so it's clear that you took to sales really, really well. That was your first calling, really, when you think about all the other jobs. What was the part of it you enjoyed the most?
I think it was meeting people and understanding, like getting to know people, getting to know why, what was your reasoning, what was your challenge, what was wrong, and to think, okay, have I got something that could fix you? And when you start to meet a variety of different people, you also start to learn a lot of things that you probably didn't know yourself about different areas, about different challenges, about, we spoke to this guy and he can do this. So it was more the exposure that I loved, and then trying to understand, okay, right, can I help you? Is there something here that we've got that's going to cure your ail, sort of thing? And I always took fulfilment out of once it was all said and done, going back and saying, okay, did it work?
Yeah.
Did it work? Are you happy? Is it where we are? Don't get me wrong, sometimes it didn't, and sometimes there was some issues after that, and everybody in sales will tell you that. Nobody always gets what they think they're going to get, but as long as, again, take the oxygen out, front it up. If something happens, right, don't run away from it. Just, okay, let's fix it. Let's kind of do something about it. And that kind of, hopefully, has been the way that I've sort of led my life since then.
That makes sense. So, selling solutions and actually seeing it through. Question about the dynamic in BT, right? So I worked in insurance for many years, and the insurance company that I worked for had local areas with agents, and they had their own patch, and it was, you can sell in your patch, but don't go outside your patch. Ultimately, what happened is they sold outside the fucking patch all the time, right? It was pretty much
chasing the money.
Pretty much anybody that came in, they would sell to, right? What was that like in BT? Did people cross over the lines at times? Was there any conflict there?
What happened was the BT split up into postcode areas.
Yeah.
So any business that was head office in your area could that was yours. So, but if you had a business there, but they had pilot offices in Glasgow City Centre and Perth, you could go to them as long as the billable was in the head office.
Right.
So you would, but what you would get would be like companies who are affiliated, who would, so okay, wait a minute, I've got a lawyer's here, but it's the same guy who owns the dentist in there. So we'd be fighting over them, saying, oh, you got that business, but actually that's called something else, but it's the same owner. Right. So that was it. And they were kind of let you guys fight it out yourselves to say, okay, listen, I've got somebody that might fall into your area, you go and see them. Right. And generally that worked. Right. For the first couple of years that worked. The biggest challenge would be is when people get greedy.
Yeah.
And I think in sales you have to be. Because at the end of the day, you've got a target, you've got something on your back you're going to be judged with by the end of that month, the end of that quarter, the end of that year. So there has to be an element of greed in that job.
Yeah.
But equally so, there also has to be a level of understanding that to get somewhere further forward, you need help.
Yeah.
And don't kind of push opportunity away just because you think the short-term gain, the long-term pain. So that I kind of, it was probably different from what I would have expected it to be. Had it been the old, the telephone systems before, it was dog eat dog.
Yeah,
literally dog eat dog.
It doesn't matter where it is.
Doesn't matter where it is.
Yeah, I always felt sorry for customers in that scenario, because a lot of the time the bickering should be behind closed doors, but sometimes the customers start catching on. Why is this taking so long? It's two the same. They just think every office is the same company.
I know.
Because it's that isolated, area, I can see how that could be a problem.
And so, how long were you in that career in the end?
I stayed in that career. So what I'd done is BT, which was local business, started changing a lot of things, and I had an opportunity to go and work with NTL. So, which was in the city centre. So it was basically, that was just literally concentrating where they had network area, and it was like the city centres. They sponsored Rangers, they sponsored Celtic, around about that time. So I had the opportunity to go and work with them, doing the same thing, but probably a bit more advanced. So in terms of telephone systems, it was managed internet services, it was virtual private networks. It was a lot more bespoke than what I'd been used to before, and decided to go and take an opportunity to sort of develop at that point. 27 years of age, I'm like, right, okay, this will take my career into the next level. And I was fortunate enough to work under a gentleman called Raymond Purden, who's sadly no longer with us. He was the sales manager at that particular point, and he was the single hardest person to work under in terms of demand.
Right.
And I'd never had that before. Like I'd people expectations of sales as you're going to meet your target. But he was, where are you today? Where are you tomorrow? Where is your target today? Where's your target? What have you built today? What have you built tomorrow? And that it sort of changed my whole approach. Was rather than wait till the last week and push it was push it for day one. Change it for day one. Start the process now. Don't let it don't let it get to the end of the month when it's too hard to deflect the path that you're on. And that kind of changed a lot of things. So I worked there. It was a kind of different job. It was basically city centre, and again, a lot of it was like finding new business myself, which obviously I had never been used to before, but different types of, you were more dealing with more corporate level, a client sense, so it's banks, it's, you're dealing with different people, all like sort of all, like, in terms of what the requirements are, completely bespoke to what obviously I'd been used to before. So I stayed in that, I worked there for a couple of years, got to a point, made some really good money, decided that I wanted to go travelling to the States.
Right.
So I had the opportunity to invest in a pub where I lived, and decided about a year earlier, listen, I'll invest in this pub and I'll still do this job. And the only reason I've done it was because it had quite a big function suite in the back of it. So everybody knows pubs don't make money unless you've got a thing. So I was kind of hands off on that, kind of help out the weekends sort of stuff. But got to the end of my career in NTL. They'd just been bought over with Telewest. So it started off NTL were buying Telewest, but then it was a reverse acquisition. NTL gave Telewest the money to buy them, so they didn't have to pay the BBC 400 million. So it was a kind of reverse merger. So everybody in NTL, who was all my managers, were all getting replaced with Telewest. So I thought, right, okay, it's totally different. Probably a good time to go. So decided to go travelling to the States. And at this point, my mum and dad were looking at buying a care home, because my mum had been care home managers all her life. She'd been a nurse since as far back as I can remember. Dual registered, a registered general and mental nurse. So she'd always been doing it for somebody else. So at that particular point, she was like, okay, I want to go and do this myself. So I had a bit of money there. I said, okay, I'm going to go and do some travelling, but here's some money. You're going to buy a care home. You can obviously invest that in it to get started.
So I can see we're getting into where you've got to in the care home space, but I really don't want to brush over the trip to America. You're going to need to tell us about that.
I can't really say much in front of Cassie. So, so I've got family who live over there.
Right.
And they were involved in like Louisiana seafish, shellfish, krill, importing a lot of stuff from Lafayette in Louisiana, all through sort of the central belt to the east coast, or the west coast, of America. So my aunt was over and she said, look, why don't you come back with me? You're going to take some time out, recharge the batteries and refocus. So decided to go over and work in a few bars like while I was there, basically places that they were providing. Obviously they were providing the obviously their seafood too. And that was an absolute experience being a guy over there, Scottish accent, drifting almost. Okay, right, I've got your job here, you can work here, all cash in hand, because it's a gig economy over there. Literally you're just getting dollars, and using what I built up as my sales skills to make sure that I was getting good tips. Because engage with people, understand what they're doing, which they need in that point. Which you need a good service. I'll make sure you get good service and obviously get something.
Did you get extra tips for the accent? How did they take to you over there?
Slow down. Slow down. And it was like, can you say that again? You say that. And the amount of people that used to say that to me, don't get me wrong, but the further west I went, more people could understand me for some reason. But when you're in Texas and like, you're kind of moving along, you're like,
it's hard, isn't it?
Aye, you're in southern states of America, you're like, what did you say? And you're right, okay, I'll need to write it down. But that was a fantastic experience. And I had opportunities to meet a lot of people. Obviously, you only get a certain amount of time in the country, and being a blonde-haired Scotsman, you kind of stand out because everybody's 6'4" anyway, and I'm we got 5'9", kind of serving you your sushi and obviously all your seafood. So that was a life lesson that I would recommend to anybody. And if for nothing more than the experience of meeting new people and seeing another country, because I had literally went from a high pressure environment to, this is great, right? Okay, I'm starting at 4 o'clock to 1 o'clock in the morning, but you're mixing with everybody, you're doing different things, and you're getting to understand people's lives, and meeting people from all walks of life in the States.
Yeah, that sounds amazing, to be fair. Do you have a favourite place that you visited?
I like California just because I was there when the weather was nice.
Right.
When I was at Texas, because I'd obviously went in the January, it was cold.
Right, yeah.
But obviously Texas goes up to like 45 degrees in the summer, so I kind of followed the weather. So by the time I got to the sort of West Coast, although my favourite place is New Orleans. I don't know if you've been to New Orleans, Bourbon Street. I was. Can you talk about it?
Aye. So my brother-in-law lived in Tennessee for 5 or 6 years, so we were back and forth a few times seeing him. And similarly, my wife and I took a career break, and she, I think, had just left uni, I want to say, and we thought, we'll go out and do 3 or 4 months over in America, and just went to see Chris for a bit, and then did a bit of a tour, but went into New Orleans for 4 or 5 days, and it's such a crazy place. Like, I always remember we were going to somewhere, going to a party, so I had a carry out in a bag, right? But as you do when you're travelling, you meet other people. So there was 5 or 6 days. We wanted to try alligator, so like there's a restaurant there that does alligator sausages. When we'll go in, but unbeknownst to us, when we got in, it was quite a fancy place, and kicking about in the shorts and t-shirt, we were like, we're in for a penny. So got to the table and said to the waitress, I'm really sorry, I know I've got this bag of cans basically, but can I just sit it under the table? And she was like, take it out and open it. I was like, are you sure? And she was like, you're going to order one in here anyway, don't worry. But it's just that type of place where it's like...
We were there, and one of the guys, and my cousin Walter, who lives over there, we were all sort of there just... Obviously, they've got the parades up Bourbon Street. I think that's in February or March time. So I had just missed that. But there was still a lot of, obviously, the beads and all that they give out, and they're flinging all the things off the things, but there was a lot of people still in Lafayette and New Orleans at that time because, obviously, of that, and experience that was probably the most... I had a weekend of doing absolutely nothing, but it was like so eye-opening for me. And don't get me wrong, there's places that you wouldn't go. One of the strangest things, obviously, after Katrina, was driving through to get there. And like you were literally driving through villages that were all boarded up. Yeah. So, and it was like metal fences, and then you'd have a red sign there that would either mean a dead body or like alligators. Because obviously Katrina had wiped out that whole part of the coast. And I always thought a bit strange that, wait a minute, that must have been... That's like, how long are they going to leave this like that? But then obviously you get right into New Orleans and it's all kind of relatively new. But that was a sort of strange thing. But that was probably the most enjoyable part. Yeah. Because I had no cares, no ties, no nothing. Literally a young guy in New Orleans doing exactly what I wanted to do.
Just a bit of a free spirit then.
So you were punted out eventually. You'd done your time there. You'd given your mum and dad a bit of dough to get a care home going. You came back. What was next?
So what they had obviously purchased a care home, Dunvegan Care Home, which was our first care home in 2009.
And where is that?
That's in Cambuslang, Howies Hill Road in Cambuslang.
Right.
They had started, feel sorry for them, they had started looking at it at the end of 2008. And then obviously the credit crunch came along. Right. So almost overnight, the deal that they had on the table from RBS, Royal Bank of Scotland, was pulled. Oh God. So they had to literally go back to Clydesdale Bank at that time, who... National Australia Group now, thanks guys. Without you we wouldn't be here. They decided to give them a deal at the last moment, which allowed them to purchase this care home. So obviously my mum's been in care all her life. I've got nothing to do with it, don't know obviously how this is going to be involved. My brother was in supporting them as well, kind of doing all the sort of like the operational stuff that had to be sort of done, because as a family we'd only ever heard how a care home was run. My dad's background's telecommunications, my background's telecommunications. Ross was in telecommunications as well, from the mobile side. So we're like, okay, how do we navigate this? So came back and they said, look, do you want to give us a hand? And I said, well, okay, you've only got one care home. It's not going to support the 4 A's. I'll kind of do some work to sort of help support it. And what became very clear for us very quickly was that there was a significant need in that area for more beds. So we approached, my mum and dad had approached the bank and said, look, obviously we want to extend the care home and obviously provide additional services. So they kind of wanted me to kind of run with that part of it. And I thought, okay, we'll get involved in this sort of side of things, but that'll be it. And decided to get involved in that. It was quite a laborious process because I'd never been involved in the construction industry. And as everybody knows, it's a difficult place to navigate if you're right behind the ears, and you don't know what you're doing. Something at £1,000, £5,000, depends who's asking. So it was a strange thing to do, but it was a sort of eye-opening experience, and it sort of led me to have my first involvement with the Care Inspectorate, who regulate the care industry. So it's their job, a very difficult job, is to make sure everybody provides a safe level of care, an expectation that you're going to be what you say you're going to be. So that was a whole new thing, and I had to sort of get involved with them because we were basically building an extension onto a care home that people were living in. So it was a sort of living challenge. To one of the days that you could actually see the trees through the roof, and like, right, okay, we need to get this fixed today. So they kind of brought me back, and get involved in that literally was like a bug. It was like, okay, how do we do this? Okay, we can't stop here because the care home's full constantly. The phone's not stopped ringing. What do we do next? Yeah. And I sort of made a conscious decision. A friend of mine had asked me to kind of help out with a mobile company. They had to say, look, can you sort of come in and do something with us? So I'd said to him, I'll do that while I was doing this for my mum and dad. I'll do that for sort of 5 months, and come back, and sort of 4 months into it, I said, look, I can't do this. We've got big plans here for the business. And at that point, my dad, my nephew was born, who's his name is Keane, obviously who the company's sort of named after. My mum and dad thought, okay, the only grandchild at that time, well, obviously that's who we'll call the company after. And we decided, okay, well, we want to develop this business. Let's sort of take an opportunity to do it now. So that's sort of where my role within the business was sort of crystallised. Yeah. And how I would say where our trajectory was sort of almost laid out in terms of where we wanted to be and how we wanted to do. Yeah, the expansion. I've got a question. So, like, obviously you've went from, you said your mother was a qualified nurse. Yeah. You went to the bank, you've got the funding, and then I know that it's not just a case of bang, there's a care home full of people in it, right? So obviously there's a lot more to it than that around getting it set up, which you've kind of alluded to, but how many sort of staff did you have when it first opened its doors then? So what happened is we bought a functioning business. So we bought a functioning business. So we took over, I think it was 24 staff at the time. It was a small care home. Yeah. And that, my mum had been used to managing teams, but then she would go home and somebody else would be the manager. When they're all looking at you for the stability, for the direction, for the guidance and for the support, it's a different thing. Yeah. So we all kind of opened the doors and said, right guys, we're the new family, we're sort of taking over. It was a culture shock a wee bit in terms of, okay, so you need to do this for a care home, you need to do that. It wasn't just managing the life of the people, and that's your most important thing. We're privileged to look after the people on behalf of their families, but it's also the other elements and aspects of the job that you see behind it. Okay, you need the gas is gone, the boilers needs fixed, there's a leak in the roof, there's minibuses, if you get disability badges, where's your activities? And all of that is very quick learning curve, because the day you take over, that's on you. Yeah. You can't pick up the phone to somebody else. Somebody's picking up the phone to you for guidance. So that was a sort of quick learning curve, and probably something that we as a family sort of, I would say, assimilated to quite quickly through my mum's experience, because we could say to her, okay, how do we do this? Yeah. What's the best way to do it? And what is the just really simply, right, what is the commercial model of a care home? So let's say, for example, I have an elderly grandparent, and we've got concerns and think really need to be looking to put them into a care home. Is it that I come and see you or whoever owns that on behalf of your business, and we negotiate upon a monthly fee, an annual fee? Is it longer than that? Or just talk to us a bit about how a care home actually makes money. So if you go back 10 years, maybe 10, 12 years, it was a different process, because what would happen is a lot of people who would obviously want to give in a care home would have pensions from the local authority, from the post office, from the Hoover, and that sort of area. So what would happen is their pensions probably wouldn't be to what pension levels are today. So what happens is, if you're in need of something, you would begin through your doctors, your GP, you'd be appointed a social worker. And what they would say to you is, okay, we've been assessed, your parent, your aunt, your uncle, your dad, your mum needs support, long-term care. Now, they would then say to you, okay, within this area, we've got a group of care homes. and obviously everyone's got their own care inspectorate registration and their gradings. This is the ones that you can want to talk to. Now you can, if you've got prior knowledge, go and say, okay, I want to go to Dunvegan, I want to go to Georgia Park, I want to go to Ryan Meadows. You can go and choose them. At that particular point, you would come and obviously have a chat with us. Now the expectation on the care homes is far more because people have a greater access to disposable income because they have higher paying pensions. So social work, where before we're funding a significant amount of your care, we're saying, okay, your income's going to cover this, we'll drop ours down. So when families now are obviously having this to pay their own money, they've got a wish list. I want this, I want this, I want this, I want this, and that's where you would come and obviously speak to the owners or to the manager of the care home. Now, if you want more, you pay more if there's certain aspects of things that are above and beyond what a standard care home would offer you. But we are all governed by the National Care Home Contract, which sets a guaranteed minimum fee. So obviously that's what you would charge the local authority. Any changes or variances in that would have to be agreed with through the family.
And on Brian's point on that then, so would that be like a monthly payment that would be negotiated that just kind of trickles in?
What would happen, figuratively speaking, coffee's kicking in, just say you had £1,000 a month disposable income and your fees are 2,000. The council would say, okay, we'll pay 1,200, you pay 800. So you're left with £50 a week.
Got you.
Roughly speaking. So that's how each individual person is assessed. Where I think it's unfair is you could have people who are paying a significant amount of money in the same type of room or things, and people who are paying. So that's where you're trying to manage that expectation, because how the councils, and because they've no money, this is the way they've got to do it now. How they approach the assessment of you and your financial model can have different impacts in each family. Because you guys could have a house that's going to be your, listen, if anything happens here, that's we're passing it on to you guys, that's your inheritance. If you don't go to the council 7 years before somebody needs to get into care, then that's classified as an asset to cover the cost of your care.
The house as well.
That's why I asked the question around the commercial model, because thankfully, as a young guy, I've not yet been in that position where I've had a parent or whoever that I've had to go to a care home. But I hear people talking, and a gripe that I always hear people about is, I work all my days to pay off my house, I want to leave it to my kids, and then I'll be quite flippant with my language because I can be, I know you can be, but I lose my marbles, I need to get into a care home, and then they're paying for that with the house that I've been paying off all my life, or with my savings that I've been plugging away at all my life. So which, I know you've started to touch on it there, but what's your viewpoint on that? Do you think that is a fair trade-off almost? Do you think there is a better way that we could be doing it?
I think, from my own personal experience, it's sometimes a difficult conversation to have with families for those exact reasons that you've mentioned, that I've lived in that house all my days. It's now been took off me, because what happens is they can put a charge against it, or they can do a sale, and very often when they sell it, it's under market value. So you're not, and you can't actually get access to the funds until, unfortunately, that person passes away and you get what's left. Now, that to me isn't fair. There's different ways that there's ways around certain things, I can say, without getting into obviously details. But for me personally, if I was in a position where, like, my mum wanted to leave a house to me or my brother, to then say, okay, they've worked all their life, as you said, to pay that, and it's gone, I think it's unfair, given that you could have people in other circumstances where they wouldn't necessarily be losing that same thing, but obviously because you've been successful, you are going to have to lose that. So it's trying to find a balance of what's fair and what's equitable across everybody, rather than just, okay, you can afford to do this and you can afford to do that. And I know, unfortunately, that's where we are in terms of financially for the councils, but again, I feel like some people can be unfairly penalised on it.
So it's as if you need to sacrifice more if you're more successful in your life. You could look at it at certain points, and it must be hard. How do you manage the emotions involved? Because I'm like Brian, where touch wood, I've not had to have any difficult conversations like that with parents or family members, but I can only imagine it must be pretty hard.
Well, people come to us first before they go and see social work. So obviously it's the council that will deal with the financial aspects. They then come back to us and say, okay, we pay this, you pay that. Very often they've had that difficult conversation with them. And for me, it's because you can have, there's very different dynamics in families. Everybody's family is different.
Yeah.
And equally so to relationships in terms of when it comes to care of elderly. And trying to manage that when there's a financial impact that you didn't expect, and also B, that you're trying to let go of someone who you've loved all your life and they're maybe not necessarily the same person. So that's where our managers of our care homes become very, very important. Yeah. And equally so our senior management team, because we try and make that transition as easy as possible. Sometimes one of the most difficult decisions in your life. And when you're expecting, like, okay, my mum's going to go into care, we'll sell the house, and you're getting married, we'll do this, to have all of that sort of taken away from you, as well as, okay, you're also, your mum or your dad or your aunt, your uncle has to get into care, is a lot to take on and process. And that's where it becomes very important for us to speak to families. I always say to them, listen, come and have a chat first. Understand what's involved in the process, because a lot of things are going to be difficult for you. It isn't easy. It's your family and you're trusting us with them. First and foremost, it's our privilege to look after them. But equally so, it's your family and you want to make sure you're doing the right thing by them. And let's kind of dispel any myths around care, but also let's put you in a position where you're not going to get any surprises. You might not like them, but you would rather know today. Yeah. And that's when people come and say, oh, I wish I'd done this 2 or 3 years ago and
got ahead of it.
Got ahead of it.
Just having that honest, transparent conversation.
Absolutely,
really.
absolutely.
And what year did you get the first care home then?
So we bought Dunvegan in 2009. We then, as I said to you guys earlier, had an opportunity to look at the local area. So we'd established some really strong relationships in South Lanarkshire. 2012, we bought Duncraggan Care Home, which is about 1.5 miles from where we are.
Right.
The process to buy a care home takes a year.
Okay.
So you've got 6 months from the care inspectorate for the registration. You pay on day one, you get the certificate in 6 months to the day.
Right.
And it's literally a piece of paper.
Yeah.
So, but that you pay your money in day one, and it's 6 months of negotiating with the bank and the families to get sort of everything agreed before you pay the money. So that process started in 2011. So we bought Dunvegan in 2009, extended it going into 2010, started speaking to the owners of Duncraggan Care Home in 2011. The sale went through in 2012. Again, similar idea, we bought a care home and we decided that, okay, there's expansion possibilities here, but we also want to increase the services that we can offer.
Yep.
To the local community. So we decided to extend that, as we had done with Dunvegan. And that was kind of different because it was 2 buildings. It was an old sandstone building and a sort of modern bungalow at the back. So again, a lot of sort of work involved with builders and councils and care inspectorate, things that I'd been familiar with after doing it a year and a half before.
First one under the belt.
First one under the belt.
The grey hairs all starting to make sense now.
Listen. do you know the thing is, when we had a conversation with the bank, and the bank says to us, listen, see when you get 2, it's dominoes. It's like things will start to kind of
trust things will track record.
Things will start to kind of go quickly. And what we decided was, after we had Duncraggan, was my daughter had just been born. And my wife, who wasn't my wife then, she was the manager of sort of Duncraggan for us. So what we decided was, okay, we'll sort of wait to see what comes up in the local area again, because we can't stretch ourselves too thin. Yep. So if there's care homes in the local area, we've got relationships here, let's sort of build on where we are. So we started to extend that. Bought that in 2012. The extension was sort of finished, getting into middle of 2013. And it was a period of sort of stability, of then sort of saying, okay, right, what do we do next? What other care homes are going to obviously come on board? And what had happened was, we, towards the end of 2014, beginning of 2015, a young gentleman had come to stay with us. Social work couldn't place him anywhere. Unfortunately, his parents had passed away. He was late. Then he would have been 39, just almost coming up in 40. Obviously had his own personal and physical obviously ailments. So a care home for the elderly is not the right place. So we were told we were only going to have him for a month. 9 months later, we've completely transformed his life, got him doing things that social work had never thought possible. They approached us and said, look, would you guys consider doing this as well as the care? So within that 9-month period, another care homes came up for sale in the area, which is now called Georgia Park. So we thought, okay, well, we're buying this care home. Do we really need to deflect our attention away from what we're doing here? Because obviously you don't want to put too many eggs in one basket. But what we said to the social work was, okay, yeah, we'll do this on a small scale. We'll try it out for you because we're buying this care home. So that sort of started that was the birth, 2015, getting 2016 of our home care services, which is called Keane Premier Support Services. And at that point, it was an unknown to us because obviously care homes were our bread and butter, sort of, and we were trying to make sure that we focused on obviously your key areas of your success, things that you know best. So at that particular point, I need to mention this, Georgia, so I will. So obviously Georgia, my daughter, had been born, so we were looking for a name for the new care home, which became Georgia Park. Obviously named after my daughter, as Keane was named after obviously my nephew. So that sort of crystallised our exposure within sort of South Lanarkshire. We had 3 strategically placed care homes within an area where there was obviously a demand for people to come in, and we'd started the support service to see how that would be. Now that was an eye-opener because you're going from looking after people all day in your care homes to 4 visits a day, sometimes 2 visits a day, to people with challenging behaviour, to young adults, and supervising them to college and things like that. And that, getting into 2016, the support service business really started to take off just as we purchased the care home in January. So it was all hands on deck, I would say. And Linda, my wife, she left the care home to go be the manager of the support service. And very quickly, I always remember it, the council said to us, look, you guys are not in the framework. Obviously, we're asking you to come in a much smaller scale, so they're allowed to contract out up to like £50,000 without going to all the other providers and saying, okay, get you on. So very quickly, throughout the course of 2016, okay, you're going to build more than that, can you sign this? You're going to build more than that, can you sign this? And we're like, okay, well, we've went from February, March 2016, 2 clients to 20 coming sort of June, July. And we realised that there was a trust in us from the council, who obviously have to support your business, but equally so that our experience in the care homes had given us a head start, and a lot of people who might want to go into that sector. Very challenging, very, very challenging sector for staff, and obviously expectation from families. But through the course of that year, we became, I would say, quite a reliable provider for the council, someone that they could trust. So that was our focus from then in, from probably 2016, sort of stabilising where we were. And we then decided that what we wanted to develop at that point was the Keane care model, where we would support you in the community until a point where you couldn't look after yourself anymore, and we would then give you the opportunity to obviously to transition into one of our care homes if you so wanted. If you didn't want, that was obviously entirely up to yourself, but we would give you a level of care and an expectation from us that you would know that if I go into one of the care homes, I'm going to be looked after because they've done it there. And that was looking back, naively we thought that would be quite an easy thing to continue to manage, but it was an eye-opener, and the demand from the council was such that business kind of
took
literally
off.
Oh, aye. Yeah.
And do you think, that demand for the council was because there wasn't a huge amount of people providing that service, or was it just that there's so much people in need, the demographics of the country, for example?
I think it's a mixture of both. What surprised me was the number of young adults that the council had available very quickly for us to go and support through various aspects of their life, and also the number of people who were not quite ready to go into a care home. The families maybe thought it wasn't necessary at that point, so they wanted them to stay at home as long as possible. And that now that is the aim of all social services, to try and keep you at home as long as possible. But at that point, it was more, okay, the council can only contract so many. The council have to give a substantial amount out to obviously private providers. So the opportunity was there. We just didn't expect that it was going to be so quick. And it was literally through the course of that year, it was, okay, you need to re-sign this agreement, you need to sign that agreement. Then it was, okay, we're going to have to go out to all the providers and tell them, actually, we're bringing you on. So, because you'd missed the initial part of it. So it was a sort of accelerated learning curve, which we would never have coped with had we not had the care homes. To have that of level of experience of, okay, this is what you should be doing, this is what you could be doing, because you're regulated by the same regulator, the care inspectorate.
Yeah.
So they're coming in with the same expectation. Had we not had that experience of the care homes, we'd have been flat out.
you'd have been struggling.
Struggling big time.
So you mentioned that right before the start of your care home journey was the financial crisis, which is overcome. So we're in 2015-16 here, and everything's starting to go well. Now, the end of the decade, another really big thing happens where care homes was massive in the news. So talk to us up to the build-up before COVID then. What was your portfolio looking like at the time that hit?
So what we had established Georgia Park, so we had Dunvegan, Duncragan and Georgia Park.
Yeah.
A triangle of carers, I used to call it, within South Lanarkshire, Cambuslang and Rutherglen area. And the support service obviously had grown quite significantly. We had the opportunity to buy 2 care homes in Mount Vernon, just obviously at the other side of the M74, in 2018. So we started that negotiation sort of August 2018. We bought 2 at the same time. As I said, banks will tell you it becomes quicker. We concluded that in 2019, just before obviously the COVID came along.
Yeah.
So that was we'd taken over the care homes in the May, and we usually give ourselves a year to sort of stabilise them and sort of start to transition them into our way of doing things. And then obviously along came COVID in 2020, which kind of changed absolutely everything.
Yeah, so obviously digging into that. So we've already spoke about how emotional care homes can be. There's a lot for families to take on, staff, yourselves. Then you throw COVID into the mix. Now, I can always vividly remember with COVID that one of the most common things in the news was care homes, because of the strain. And do you know what? I'm not even going to talk to us through it. What was that like at the time?
It was, the eye of the storm.
Yeah.
Literally the focus of all areas. And there was a narrative in the press and on TV which portrayed a certain way that care homes were, which was very unfair.
Yeah.
There was regulatory changes placed on us by organisations that hadn't really had any influence within the private care home sector before, but you were then obviously asked to change your process of doing things to get to where they are. We were one of the companies, we've been selected to be involved in the COVID inquiry, so obviously there's certain things I can't kind of I can't kind of touch on, but it was the most difficult probably period of my life, professionally and personally, because of the demands of what. Because what had happened was everybody was scared. There was a fear factor. We were asking people to come into work knowing that on the news it was telling you this virus can kill you, but we were asking people to come into work knowing that it's in the care home or it's in the local area. And you've then got the regulators obviously doing their job, but equally being guided by outside organisations who not necessarily know what it's like to live in a care home every day. Yeah. So you'd have someone coming from a hospital, come into a care home and say, no, everybody can't sit all together, or you need to make all these changes. And regulations were changing at some points 3 times a day. We get told something at 10 o'clock, told something at 1, and then at 5 o'clock say, forget what we told you at 1, go back to 10 o'clock.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, wow.
So that was, and what you have to deal with is a society on the brink of fear for obvious reasons, but equally so having a love for a family member that you can't go and see because you've been told that it's not possible. So families were obviously frustrated with care homes, and care homes are obviously in the news because if you've got a lot of vulnerable people living together, serious illness can have it's quite obviously as it happened, a devastating effect on people. Yeah. So it was so difficult. I felt that the sector could have been supported a whole lot more in terms of the support and the narrative out in the public domain, because it was almost like a focus area of frustration, and quite rightly so, because we were given regulations that we had to follow, and it was just so difficult because we're family. We're a family business. I know how I would feel if it was my family member, and you can't ever escape that. We're not a corporate organisation. We look at it the way you look at it, and to then be told to put restrictions and things in place was a very difficult thing for us to do, particularly so when things changed in such a fluid time. Yeah, that was hard, very, very hard.
That must have been. I could see how that's been your most challenging point, because
absolutely.
I think you hit the nail on the head around the fear element. Because let's face it, when that happened for years, well, for good period of time, nobody really had a clue what was going on. It could have went here,
It's
there.
completely uncharted, so everybody was making it up as they went along, let's be honest, and we probably sat in our houses, were able to almost observe for a distance that whole the goalpost moving every 20 minutes, it felt like, so it must have been mega tough being in the eye of that.
The most difficult thing is, and I will say this, I'll put myself out there saying this, is that we are restricted on what we can say in the COVID inquiry.
Right.
You can't tell them that. You can't talk about that. You can't bring this up. So if this is going to be a transparent look at what everybody went through, I'm disappointed to say that it's probably not going to cover everything that it should cover.
Right.
Again, for legal reasons and things out with certainly my control or our businesses' control or the local authority and government's remit. But I think if we're looking back with a more sort of, try to think, I'll phrase this the right way, a more understanding view of what everybody went through, and I think we've missed that opportunity.
Yeah.
And the sector is still trying to get over that. Obviously, there's a new law now with the Care Inspectorate, thankfully, where if there's ever another pandemic, that you've got a legal right to see your family, which I think is bizarre that you need a legal right to see somebody in your family, but that's put in place that'll never happen again. So there'll be no window visits, letterbox visits. I mean, people's birthday and you're waving through a window. So difficult. And as I say, my heart goes out to every family. It was so hard for them.
Yeah.
Can I ask you a question on? You've kind of skated over some of this as though it's just like the easiest thing in the world, right? But like your entry into care homes and then extending beyond that is we acquired a business, we got it up to capacity, we bought another business, we got it up to capacity, we bought another one, we had a bit of a variance in model, got it to capacity, we bought another one, making that sound like it's the easiest thing in the world, right? But every time you're acquiring a new one, you've got existing owners to deal with, negotiating finances. What's your preferred model, I guess, around acquiring a new business? Do you have, right, that works perfectly for us now, so it's just rinse and repeat every time?
We, first of all, to buy a care home, the 6 months process with the Care Inspectorate is your whole life history. So if you're any criminality or anything like that, listen, they're not interested and you won't get it. So that part you have to do for every purchase in case anything has changed, which obviously the regulators quite rightly make sure that the sector's full of people who should be in there. We identified after Dincraggan that our niche was turnaround specialists. So if a care home was in distress, so Georgia Park was in administration at the time.
Right.
So at a capacity of 38, it was running about 50% capacity. We turned it around, running at 100% capacity. Our average capacity now is 98% across our group. After that, we quickly identified that we had a niche of understanding where the challenges were and where to put it right. So we've developed our care model around the fact for home care services, this is what it will look like. For care homes, if it's a distressed care home, this is what we do. That's what influenced the purchase of Ashton Grange and Greyfriars, 2 care homes in significant financial distress and the verge of closing. So we went in with our financial model, turned them round virtually in the space of 6 months to be unrecognisable to where they were before in terms of capacity, efficiencies and expectation from families. And that's what sort of drives us forward now. We bought Ryan Meadows, which was named after my son Ryan, not me. A bit self-serving. That's the truth, by the way. Because again, a care home which was in significant distress, took the model that we have and applied that, and it's worked again. So that's where I see growth and development within the business. We've moved into North Lanarkshire in terms of our home care business. We have opportunities in the pipeline with some other providers of care homes, which we're currently speaking to, which I can't go into detail for through NDAs and things. But again, what we're looking for is, to touch on it, is somewhere to buy an established care home probably doesn't give us the opportunity to do what we do best.
Right.
So our idea is to go and look for somewhere there is an area that we can make improvements. We've got a very strong relationship with Barclays Bank. We've been with them since 2016. They support us throughout our growth. In terms of going out to do some things, they literally, as long as we identify it, we agree on a business model, they'll support us to do that. So that process has been very helpful for us. I see an acceleration now in terms of what we've been able to do because we've built up our core management team. everybody understands their role within the business. Everybody understands where we want to get to and what your part will play in that growth. And we then need to make sure that when we decide to push the button on a purchase, that everybody's clear on the expectation from myself and Ross in terms of where we go and how you get us to that point. So we're hopefully now, and over the next 3 to 5 years, in a position to sort of, grow a bit.
And you mentioned Ross there. Are your parents still involved, or is it just you and Ross now?
My parents are happy grandparents, looking after obviously all the kids. My dad very quickly is my son's best friend. He was my daughter's best friend growing up. He was Keane's best friend. So they've been a very strong influence in the business. My mum always said, if the quality of care changes, you're changing the name. Mm-hmm. So I've kind of lived by that mantra, that if things are not to the level that she had when she ran the first 2 care homes, then obviously we're doing something wrong. Mm-hmm. So they're a very steady influence for myself and Ross. We're different characters. Ross has got an innate gift of finding opportunities, care homes in distress, things that I necessarily might not get access to or would know. Ross finds them on a plate. Mm-hmm. I don't know how he does it, but he's great at it. He's also a very structured person on what he does. So he likes to make things have got to fall into a process, whereas I can be, through my sales background, a wee bit more blasé about it. So the yin and the yang works very well together. Things I'll think will be a great idea. If he doesn't agree with me, we'll say, listen, we'll go and sit down and talk to my mum and dad and say, what do you think, guys?
Whose side are you taking?
Who's in agreement? And as I say, both of them have been a massive influence on us.
I quite like that, though. It's almost just like a mediator or somebody that's independent but they still care, and can hopefully give you that honest opinion, almost like a wee board of directors that you can sit down with. Like.
What I said to him is, okay, you're not involved, but you started it. Mm-hmm. You started it, so any decision we make carries the history of what you created. So it's only right that we're all involved in every major decision, that we say, look, we're thinking about doing this, we're thinking about doing that. We actually bought a closed care home in Wishaw, which we're converting into, it was in the Daily Record last week, we're converting into assisted living flats for young adults for our North Lanarkshire home care service. Right. But we never told them about that. Right. So when they found out, it was an interesting discussion, right, used to. Never told us about that. People phoning me saying, here's Ryan giving us a statement about a new purchase. So obviously the day-to-day stuff, where we use their guidance is things where we might not necessarily agree, and you say, okay, in the day it's your decision, me and him will make a decision on it, but it's only fair that they get to play a part. They started it.
That's clever. I like that. And just I had another question, if that's all right, about the whole caring community aspect. So I guess I'll go out on a limb and say there's probably very few people that like want to live in a care home, right? And old people in particular can be stubborn. I'm not going to any care home, I'm staying in my house. And with an ageing population, that creates a real challenge because they need care, they're not willing to get into the care home, so then the family's stuck in that position. I want to do right by them, but it's really, really tough for me trying to chip in. And so I guess, you've identified a need there. It sounds like you've got people out and about in the community now. Is that an entirely tougher challenge when you've then got a whole army of people doing it on the go, out and about, and trying to sort who's going where? And
KPSS during COVID went like that. Literally, because you could only work in care. So it went from about 30 staff up to about 250. Literally, almost, because over the course of 2 years, everybody needed. The problem we've got is that it's a very challenging sector. It has a high turnover rate of staff. You're in the 60%, so 6 out of every 10 staff that you train, uniforms, will leave and go somewhere else. So you're constantly recruiting, and what families and everyone else expect, and quite rightly so, is continuity of care. So it's the same person that understands my mum's challenges. But when that door's revolving all the time and you're trying your best to incentivise staff to stay, give them obviously things to look after them, to give them the best opportunity to do their job in a difficult industry that's competing with McDonald's offering £13 and other places offering more money, and to then have an agreed pay structure which is lower than everyone else, because the councils come to us and say, okay, you need to agree to pay the national living wage now, but we're paying £4.50 more than you and we're recruiting to do the same job. So that part of it becomes sort of very difficult. And the ever, because touching back to what I said before, if someone comes to you and says, okay, your mum's going to get into a care home, we're going to sell the house. No, I want to live at home. The next 7 years, the challenge of maintaining your mum in that house for 7 years, because you might not want, obviously, the financial impact of that can be difficult as well. Aye. So that's where it's very important to speak to families and understand what their need, their requirement, their expectation is, and where you see yourself now and where you see yourself in 3 to 5 years. Yeah. And understanding that very quickly to say, okay, well, yes, we can help you, or maybe we're not the right person to support you on that journey.
That's a good point, actually. So, conscious of time, but obviously we're marketers, and we look at trends and we look at forecasts, and there's probably, I don't know what your opinion on this is, Ryan, but there's probably more that could be done with the education of people in our age bracket.
100%.
Because ultimately, if something like this happened to me tomorrow,
it's coming, innit? It's coming. It's inevitable.
I have no idea how I would handle it. And the question I had for you is, have you looked ahead maybe 10, 20 years, any analysis, and is the population of potential residents in here in sort of care homes, is that due to increase, or are we at the peak now with the age demographic, or how's it looking in the next 20 years?
People are living longer. I think in the last calculation, I think there's about 8,000 beds short in certain areas throughout West Central Scotland.
Wow.
And north, in terms of that might actually include a significant part of Scotland where there just isn't enough people there isn't enough beds for the people, but it's easy to say that people can go in and live in a care home. You need to staff it, so there has to be incentives for staff.
Yeah.
It is an ageing population. What also is happening is that there's a more dynamic level of care required, because people might have various different things that they need support with, which previously before wouldn't have come into a care home.
Yeah.
Because obviously there's significant levels of dementia, Alzheimer's, things that can be of obviously challenges for families to deal with at home. So that whole sector has to be supported. The government, I see 2 days ago, just is trying to start the National Care Service, which would completely reform it, look at it differently, have a more government approach rather than local authority approach. But the biggest contributor, Cosla, has just pulled out 2 days ago to say that they don't support it. So I don't really see where it's going to go now. And it's the private sector is called the Cinderella service for a reason. It's underfunded in terms of other aspects of care within the community and also in care homes. Some local authorities are paying themselves twice as much as they pay the private providers for the same thing, and obviously paying their staff £5, £4, £5 an hour more. So if you're going to rely on this service to provide long-term support and care for the people who need it, you need to help us to help you. And I think that's the conversation where the next 20 years is how that's going to look, because we will get to a point where there won't be enough beds for people and it will be home care. But if it's home care to a certain point, then you need to incentivise the population to want to do that job.
Yeah.
Pay them fairly, give them opportunities to learn and develop.
So there's going to have to... Yeah, there's going to need to be some backing somewhere, because if it's only going to go up, as you say, we need more people, more facilities to do it.
Do you know, we're starting to partner with a lot of organisations just now. We're partnering with obviously a financial organisation who are going to provide financial advice to families when they come and speak to us now in terms of around pensions, wills and different things, because I feel that's needed now because of the level of change and affordable income for people who's coming in. That's something that wouldn't have happened 10 years ago. That will play a much bigger part moving forward, because people will then think, okay, well, I go into a hotel, I get this and this, I want a gym. If I'm going to go there, I want access to a small swimming pool. That's going to change how a care home looks. Now the new development of care homes is all bistros, cafes, cinema rooms, bowling out. It's going down that route.
I heard a rumour that the one in Bothwell has a bar. Somebody was telling me.
It's got cocktail bars. Our care homes are traditional old buildings, but all the new ones are all cocktail bars. We're developing our own private dining experience. We've got flats in the community that families can go, and obviously we'll send our chefs down to cook for them if it's birthdays and things like that as well.
Right, okay.
That's where I was going back to you about the wish list. Because people will say, okay, well, if I'm going to be paying more, I expect that and that. Whereas before, 10 years, 15 years ago, it was, I just need someone for my family member to live securely. Now it's, we want a wee bit more, and that'll be the challenge moving forward. There is organisations building care homes. It's what the expectation of these people are going to pay to live in that care home. Will be the big challenge.
All right, well, listen, as always, our time is up. It's the quickest hour and a bit every week that we have. We could sit and talk to you about this all day, but we'll wrap it up just by saying congratulations, well done to you and
Thank
your
you.
family. By the sounds of things, you have created a great business.
Appreciate that.
One that's, you know, on the face of it, really scalable. All the best for the future.
Thank you.
And I appreciate the insight as well, because there's been a lot of stuff there that we've chewed through that's been brilliant but also tough. So
tough.
thanks for joining us and being an
No,
open book on that.
listen, guys, I appreciate the invite. There is a lot within the sector, a lot, probably more people like myself who have so much more to say. It's just great to get an opportunity to go on a podcast like this and tell it how it is and let people know, pull the cover back, and this is what it's really like.
Yeah.
And frustration can be sometimes that we don't get that chance, so I'm grateful. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Well, thanks again to all our audience, as always, for tuning in. We will be back in a couple of weeks with another episode. Give us a like, give us a follow. Be sure to share Ryan's post. I'm sure you'll do the same, Ryan.
Absolutely.
And we'll speak to you all again soon.
Thank you.
Thanks everyone. Thanks Ryan.